Sir, thank you for speaking to PTI. Sir, my first question is, given the current global geopolitical tensions and trade uncertainties, how do you see the Indian economy doing this year and next year?
It's actually quite creditable that Indian economy has grown by 6.5% and is expected to grow by the same number, 6.5 to about 7% in next, FY26 and FY27. Because if you look at it, all our neighboring countries have gone, into a lot of problem, and even China's growth rate has come down. But India has managed its growth rate at above 6.5%, which is quite creditable. So and I expect that with this, all this fragmentation of the world market, etc., going on, India will have to work harder, and India will have to, think of new ways to maintain this growth rate. Although it's so, therefore, in short, what I'm saying is that yes, it's been good. Yes, we can expect this to continue, but for it to be maintained and also, to be raised further, we can't be complacent. We have to be on the lookout and also take the measures required, to actually boost, primarily to boost private consumption, because the private investment, because private investment has been weakened over the last few years, since COVID. And one of the reasons had been that the small and medium enterprise sector, that had taken a big hit, and they've not recovered. So we need to give greater attention to that, because they, after all, constitute 35% of GDP and about 30% of our exports. So, and there are several other steps that we need to take. So if we do that, then there is no reason to believe that Indian economy will not grow between 6.5 to 7%.
Sir, the FDI has been a bit volatile. So does that bother you, sir? FDI has been...
Yeah, absolutely. It bothers me quite significantly, because now, from the most recent figures, net FDI inflow into India was almost zero. And that's really a cause of concern, because that means that we are not being able to attract the savings done by other countries into our economy. Now, the corollary of that is that your current account deficit should be allowed to go up a little bit. And if it goes up, then foreign investment covers that and takes care of that. So yes, India must look at sources of FDI and try and attract both types of FDI. One is called the portfolio flows, and the other is direct foreign investment. Of course, the direct foreign investment is preferable, but as long as you can attract both, I think we need to do that and give it much greater attention. The other part of that is that recently, in a book by Sanjay Baru, Succession of the Successful, he is pointing out that those who are successful in India are actually going away and taking their investment with them. And I think that again is an area where the government needs to give greater attention, because that's like our own capital and talent going away from our country at a time when we need them here, much more than anything else.
So should we leave curb on Chinese investment in India?
I think it's time to really reconsider our approach towards that, and let me be forthright. I think it's time to remove Press Note 3, which is the press note that regulates investment from neighboring countries. The only neighboring country which matters is, as you know, is China. And I think that's something that we should seriously think. And I hope that when the Honorable Prime Minister goes to China in November, I think for the SCO meeting, that he would have sort of taken this step before he went to China, because China's FDI today is quite enormous. Actually, it's more than, I don't know the exact number, but it's now become a very big foreign investor in other countries, and we need that investment. The other part of it is that investment will produce things locally which we now import from China. So that is always better, because then, imports don't create employment. Imports don't create backward linkages. So if you allow Chinese investment, they will manufacture here and they will produce, and maybe they can also export. So, and there are in some sectors Now China has become the world's best. So I think time to seriously consider permitting Chinese investment into India.
So the US President Donald Trump has announced 50% tariff on Indian export to US. So what should be India's trade policy vis-a-vis US?
We should not react to this. That's my first understanding. If they have done it, they have done it. We should keep, we should be steady and, continue with whatever, there. There is no reason to either say that we will, retaliate, or to say that, we are backing down. Nothing of that sort. That's all right. What we need to do is to take steps to ameliorate the impact of these things.
What will be its impact on Indian economy and jobs?
The Indian economy, people have estimated from that the GDP could be affected negatively by 0.25 to 0.5%. Now that doesn't take into account that India can diversify its exports, which were earlier going to the US, to other countries. That's one part, and we can do that. If the UK agreement comes through and if EU comes through, we can do that. The second part of it is that there are still areas, for example, like tourism, or investment from the US, from technical companies, which can continue and can become stronger. And if that becomes stronger, that impact will be that much lesser. For India needs to now take a strong step in formulating state-specific export promotion policy. For the same export promotion policy for the whole country cannot work, because Punjab, the condition of Punjab and Tamil Nadu is completely different. So if we now focus on the states, give them a kind of a competitive scenario in which encouraging states to do better in exports, I think that sort of step is required, and it's a good opportunity to do that, and a good opportunity to make our exports far more attractive. Make sure that your rupee is not overvalued. Make sure that your ease of doing business for the export sector is as good as it can be. Make sure that your small and medium enterprises who export a lot of labor-intensive products get all the benefits, get all the incentives that they can. So this is the time when we can actually remove export pessimism, which has been the hallmark of Indian policy for a very long time. So rather than say, okay, no more exports for us, we should just do the reverse and say, no, we'll expand our exports and find different areas and different products.
Should we stop buying Russian oil? Ready? Sir, should we stop buying Russian oil to make Donald Trump happy?
Not necessarily, because as our foreign minister has pointed out on more than one occasion, both the US and Europe continue to import strategic products from Russia. And so what is good for them should be also good for us. But I've seen that we've already taken steps to reduce the share of Russian oil in our total imports of oil. That's been done already. But I think we should not let all this impact our very long-standing and strategic relationship with Russia. They've always stood by us, and I think it's important that we stand, that we continue with this. Fact is that what has been done already, it can't be much worse than this. But nonetheless, I think the last time I was talking about the US trade, the key is also to keep negotiating. Negotiate, and then some of our red lines, if there are some, we can dilute them a bit, so that we can reach a compromise, because the world is all about compromises, so that if you can do that, then that's better. But on Russian oil, if the push comes to a shove, then we will have to replace it, with some other imports. If, for example, the US president even threatens more steps, which are much harsher, and in that stage, India will have to, I suppose, reconsider.
Can we give them access in agriculture sector? Sorry? Can we give US access in our agriculture sector?
As long as it is not GMO. That's my belief. Because GMO is a completely different ballgame. But that interferes with our own health and our lifestyle and all of that. But otherwise, I mean, take the example of dairy, for example, right? And if dairy, as long as their cows, the milk is not produced out of steroids and bone meal, etc., our farmers, 200 million cattle, etc., they are fairly competitive. I mean, all are cooperative in the dairy sector. And there are so many of them led by Amul. I think they can give the US imports a very good fight. And maybe it will improve the competitiveness and the productivity in our own dairy sector. So I am not, I am not so averse to permitting some access to US imports in agriculture. We had given them already some. For example, California pistachios and almonds are already available here. They want lower duties, that can be done. Because anyway, again, pistachios and almonds are not grown extensively, and that doesn't affect our farmers in a very big way. So I think those are areas where we can reconsider our current stand, and maybe given that might give us an opportunity to improve the productivity and competitiveness level of our Indian agriculture.
So what is your overall assessment of the PLI scheme? Which was launched when you were Vice Chairman of NITI? What is your assessment of PLI scheme?
Yeah, PLI scheme. Well, it started off very well, and I think Apple is a great example that now it's doing so much exports, $20 billion, etc. But I think overall that I've seen that the dispersion under the PLI, all the 13 sectors that have happened, is not according to the plan. It's fallen behind. And I think we now need to look at what are the reasons for this. Because again, my hunch is that these reasons will have to do with the ease of doing business and the extraordinary regulatory and compliance burden which is present even in these sectors, which may be preventing the private investor to meet the targets that they've already announced. So I think PLI scheme as an industrial policy is very good. We have to make it successful. But to make it a success, we should look at all the conditions that need to be changed to give it the success.
Sir, we have seen more than 3 decades of economic reform and liberalization. Are there certain sectors which still requires protectionism?
Still require?
Protectionism?
I'm against protectionism because I think protectionism results in us producing inferior products and our consumers getting products at higher prices and not get the advantage of global competition. So all sectors, though except some maybe like defense or something, I don't think they require protectionism of that order. But the fact remains, you see, that unless the government makes it its principal objective of promoting private investors and private enterprise and giving them all the help that they require to be able to compete at the world level and grow the scale at that level. Unless we do that, we opening up the sector, can do harm, like it had done for electronic hardware when we signed that treaty with zero tariffs, I think sometimes in the late 90s. So I think, so we should move towards a regime which is open and which is less protectionist, but at the same time move towards it in a manner that first ensures that our private enterprise gets all the help and benefits that it requires to become globally competitive.
So states want higher devolution. So what will you advise to 16th Finance Commission Chairman Rajiv Panagaria?
I'm sure he is well aware of all that can be done, but 42% is already quite high. And I think any further devolution should come as a conditional devolution. That if the states are able to do A, B and C, then those states get a higher devolution and not everybody. Because I think that will then spur the movement towards greater competitiveness and greater ease of doing business. So I think my big take at the moment is that all those states which reduce the regulatory and compliance burden should be given a higher devolution a higher share, because that will again will benefits and empower, grow the private enterprise. But otherwise, and in general, that the state that we've reached with 42%, I think that's good enough.
So my last question is, recently China stopped export of rare earth material to India and US. So what should India do to ring-fence its businesses and industry?
I think the best thing that we can do actually is to heavily promote recycling industry in the country. I know one or two companies, and I just met them yesterday, which are able to extricate or recycle 98% of the lithium that is there in the battery. And they were telling me with confidence that if they were able to grow with a scale, in 5 years India will not need to import any lithium any longer. So that's one part of it, and they can do this in a very big way, much bigger way. The second is to encourage innovation and technology to replace some of these materials by alternate materials. I know that some companies are investing in these innovative firms abroad, but the sooner we can push more. And here I think the key will be for the public-private partnership in innovation becoming much stronger and much more robust. So that is when you will be able to find substitutes for these rare earths and rare minerals. For example, open up. When I was in NITI Aayog, we had taken the initiative to open up the rare minerals, for the private sector. Otherwise, it used to be only under ISRO. But do some things like that, and I'm sure we'll be able to overcome. But again, to go back to our earlier point, I think it is time to engage with China in a much more meaningful way, both for their foreign direct investments and also for our own access to their markets and about the sort of availability. Because rare earths and rare minerals are one thing. We also import almost all of our APIs, advanced pharmaceutical ingredients, from China. So we need to secure all of that before we develop our own, domestic production capability.
Thank you very much for coming with me.
Thanks.